So last class we have discussed about the variables in various ways, okay, how to define the variables, etc. Okay, now we'll see, and we have seen some, some program or some program also I have seen, right? We have seen, right? So these are the programs, and there are various way also we have seen. So any confusion, guys? Any doubt you are having, or any kind of problem you are facing, or maybe you are having some confusion? Why we should not declare like this, or why should we declare like this? Any kind of confusion if you are having, you can ask me directly. Okay. Otherwise, we will start the constant because okay. So let me see here. Yeah. So that is the constant. So what is the use of constant? Hmm? Why constant are required? Why constant are required, guys? Can you please tell me why constant are required? Can you please quickly answer? Anybody is having any idea about it? Guys, tell me. Okay, so there are few answers. Ullas is saying specific number it has. Okay, Akanksha is saying constant means a static value. Yes, yeah, you are right. And yeah, it means fixed value. Yes, and like if you want to not change the value, that is correct. Constant means once you declare the variable, once you initialize the variable, okay, whatever the value you are providing at the time of first time initialization, okay, after that Java won't allow you to modify that variable, correct? That is the meaning of final. That is the meaning of constant, correct? So constant are also known as final variable, okay? So whenever you are going to specify any constant, you have to use final keyword. Final is the specifier. Already I have discussed. There are 50 keywords, right? So among them, there are certain, specifiers are there. Okay. So this is one of them, and final is the final we will be using to so that your JVM will understood. Okay, this variable is behaving like a constant. Okay, final is indicating that whatever value you are giving, that would be the final value, and you cannot modify it. Once it is initialized, you cannot change it, that value. Clear? So the condition is whenever you are defining the variable. Okay, so can anybody tell me, because here they are writing clearly that you cannot change the value of variables once it is initialized. Why we cannot change that variable? Okay, what is the reason why we cannot change it? Hmm? So there is one important point here that you need to remember is, first of all, okay, that part I will define later. First, see here, and if you're defining the constant, it must be initialized with the same line. Otherwise, compiler will give the error. So as far as we have discussed, okay, so if you understood completely what is variable and how to initialize variable, okay, if you are understanding how how variables are behaving, okay, then I think if it is easier to understand why these constants are required to initialize in the same line. Why? What is the use? If I will declare final int I, and in next line if I will do I is equal to 10, you will get error. Immediately compiler will give the error. You cannot do this. Okay, so the condition is you always have to declare the variable and initialize the variable immediately in the same line. You don't have the chance to declare, you don't have the chance to initialize this variable in the next line. You don't get that chance. Then what will you do? Okay, and why they made that kind of rule? Why you can't change? I want your idea. Why we cannot change? Why we cannot initialize the variable in the next line? Can you please tell me, guys? Why we cannot initialize the variable in the next line, or in the different line? Hmm? Ullas is saying it get confused. Who will get confused, you or JVM? Vinay is saying because you mark as final. No. So see, final I mark, it's okay. Final is just indicating that this is the constant. I is the constant variable. It's okay, no problem. But why that is important that I have to declare I is equal to 10 also here? Why they are forcing? Why JVM why Java people are forcing us to initialize the variable in the same line? That is my question. Why they made that kind of rule? You have to think out of the box, because that thing is very important to understand. If you know that, then only you will understand, okay, this is the reason why that is important. Okay, suppose as I in the previous classes, okay, in the previous class I have discussed about the variable, right? So if you are having the variable string, sorry, 1 minute. So this is our string. This is our one variable string msg is equal to one string. Okay, so this is the object. This is the literal. So the object would be created inside the heap as we know. Okay, and for this variable, there would be 8 bytes given. Okay, initially there would be null assigned because it's a reference type. According to that, null is the default value. So value would be given here. Initially, it is not pointing to any object, but as soon as if you are assigning some value to msg variable, this value you are assigning, right? This value you are assigning to msg variable. That means is this value is nothing but the object. So object would be created inside the heap, and the address of the heap is suppose wherever the object is created, the address of the object is 9393, and the null will be replaced by 9393. This is the address, this is the reference of the object. So that means it is pointing to this object. Clear, guys? Now what will happen? Okay, as we know that constant, as we know the constant you cannot change, you cannot change the value. Okay, if you don't have any problem, I will remove this. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, now I'm having one variable, or maybe some variable, you can say maybe integer type. Int I is equal to 10. Int I is equal to 10. Okay, so now, but how I want to define this variable as constant. What should I do here? Is it the constant, guys? No, right? It is not the constant. It's a simple variable. But as soon as if you are saying it's a final, that means immediately this variable will become constant. Now you cannot change the value. What is the meaning of changing the value? That means is here you are writing final int I is equal to 10. Now later point in time, in any place of the any corner of your program, you cannot write, you cannot assign different value to I. You cannot do so. Okay, you cannot write I is equal to 20, or I is equal to 10 again, or I is equal to 12, whatever it is. You cannot do this thing. But with the normal variable, which is int x is equal to suppose 50. Later point in time, okay, later point in time we can change the value to 25, no problem. X is equal to 35, no problem. X is equal to some other value, right? This you can do easily with the normal variable. But in the case of final variable, in the case of constant, okay, once this variable is initialized, now I think up to now I don't think that you are having any kind of doubt between declaring the variable and initializing the variable. If you are having, just let me know. Again, I will clear. Otherwise, we can move further. Just quickly respond, please. Yeah, clear? Okay. So, okay. So now we will see. So, declaring the variable is very simple up to here. Up to here is the declaration part. And if you are assigning any value to this variable, that means you are initializing it. Clear? So so we are discussing why that is why it is important to initialize the variable in the same line if it is constant. If we are defining the we are defining the constant, if we are writing the constant, okay, why it is important to initialize in the same line? That is the question, right? That's what we are discussing here. Clear? So uh, so as you know, earlier in the earlier class we have discussed that if it is the global variable, okay, if it is the global variable, so already you know what is the global variable now. Any member, or I mean any variable which is declared directly inside the class, which is declared directly inside the class, right? So that is known as global variable. 1 minute, somebody is saying something. So Abhinay is asking final int I is equal to 10 outside the method. Not only method, what I'm saying, just remember, okay, whatever you are declaring directly inside the class, whatever you are declaring directly inside the class, this is the class test and this is the boundary of the class, right? You can declare n number of method here, no problem. But if you are declaring any variable inside these methods, okay, those are not global variables. Okay, directly you can declare here only. Okay, you can declare those variable here directly outside the method inside the class. Not only method, you can, okay, you can define a number of other members also, like constructors, okay, instance block, static initialization block, etc. So these are the members. Okay, similarly variables are also the member of the class. Variables are also the member of the class. So the global variables are which are directly declared inside the class, not inside the members. If you are declaring inside any member of the class, that means that is not the global variable, it is the local to that particular member, whatever, whether it can be a method or maybe constructor or instance initialization block or static initialization block or anywhere. Okay, but if your variable is comes directly inside the class outside of any of the members, that variable is known as global variable. Clear? So already we have seen that already in this program. See here, in this program, not here. See here, JVM will allocate the memory for below variables that are the global variables. Clear? These are the global variable because this is not, because these variables are directly defined inside the class. These variables directly defined inside the class. And this int I1 and I2, these are the local variable because it is declared in one of the member. This main method is one member inside this class. Okay, like this there can be n number of members. Okay, so keep in mind whenever the variable is global, okay, JVM is responsible to provide the default value. Okay, if you are not providing, JVM is responsible to provide the default value, correct? So here we will see, we will discuss, first we will see about the global variable. Okay, if your constant, see here, class test. This is your class. And if you're defining your constant here, final int I, okay, final string msg. I'm talking about the global variable, okay, forget about local variable. In this case, guys, can you please quickly confirm who is responsible to provide the default value? Who is responsible to provide the default value? This is my class, and these two are two variables are present inside that class. Now who is responsible to provide the default value if you are not providing? Have you observed? I haven't provided any value. I haven't provided any value to these variables, right? Now if I will compile and run this class, if I will compile this class, okay, and if I will try to run this, okay, maybe I will write something like this. Instead of closing here, I will write public static void main, okay, and something like this here, and I will try to, if I will define this static, okay, because I cannot access these variable inside the static scope. So this is the scope of static, because main method is the static method, that's why. So now if I will try to print system.out.println I, okay, and msg. Forget about if it is not constant. If these variables are not final, then what it will print? What it will print? I value and msg value. Tell me. Tell me, guys. What would be the value? What is the value here? Yeah. So tell me now. What is the default value? Abhinay. Yeah. I is equal to 0. MSG is, what is the default value for MSG? What is the type of MSG? Akansha. Type of MSG is string. String is the reference type. Reference type, that means it is having the default value null, correct? Yes. So you by default you will get 0 and null. Okay. Suppose now these variables becomes final. If these variables become final, okay, that means these only the value will be assigned to it or not by default by JVM or not. Clearly, I mean, tell me that. If I will not initialize here, because I haven't initialized here, right? I haven't initialized. Then who will initialize this variable? JVM. JVM will initialize these two variables, okay, with the default value. Correct? JVM will initialize these two variables with the default value. That means once the default value, as soon as the default value will be initialized, I mean given to these two variables, okay, so then so later point in time, since these variables are the constant, you cannot modify this value, okay. So I value is 0 and msg value is null. Now but for this purpose I haven't defined these variables, right? My purpose was different. I don't want to use the I value as 0 and msg value as null, right? So that is the importance, and that is why the constant has to be initialized in the same line. Now, any doubt, any confusion, guys? Can you please tell me? Any doubt now? Why it is important and why it is necessary to declare the constant in the same line? Because JVM, if you are not defining, okay, if you are not providing the value to the constant, then JVM will try to provide the default value. Ultimately, some memory would be allocated and some value has to be given, right? So the value would be given default value if you are not providing. So if you are providing if the JVM will provide the default value, then what is the use of defining constant? Because you want to assign some different value, right? That's why you are defining I here. just not to define, just not to initialize I value with 0 and MSG value with null, right? You want to use this I and MSG variable for your purpose instead of this default value, right? But JVM will give the default value if you will not provide. So the condition is whenever you will define any constant, you have to initialize in the same line. Clear? That is the actual advantage of constant. This is one thing. Uh, and second thing is, okay, second thing is, okay. So any confusion guys up to now? Any doubt guys? Please confirm. Okay, no, clear, fine. We will save this as test.java, test4.java. Okay, we'll save this as test4.java. Now we'll define Java class test4. Okay, class test4, and you know that public static void main is the entry gate, right, for this program. Clear? As we know, as far as we know, right? So this is one of the member, this is one member of the this class. Clear? You remember this terminology, whatever the terms I am using, those are very important. Okay, this is one member. Okay, tomorrow we will study the constructor, maybe day after tomorrow we will study something else. So whenever we will study that particular thing, I will define the scope, I mean I will define the term also, what is this. So constructor is also one of the member inside the class. Okay, we'll discuss this thing in later point in time. Now here, suppose if I am defining final int ab, if I will define final int ab, or maybe not here. Okay, so that was, I mean, whatever I have discussed, that was about the global variable. Okay, see here, final int ab. And one more thing before going to this, let me just tell you that one more scenario. Okay, so now you understood about the global variable and why we are not defining the I mean whether we can why we are initializing the variable in same line. Now you understood, right? Any confusion guys, why it is important to initialize the variable in same line, to initialize the constant in same line? Clear? Now if it is the local variable, suppose if I'm defining one class, if you are having the class test, suppose this is one class you are having. Now inside this you are having one member, and I already told you whenever you are defining the variable inside any member of the class, that variable is nothing but the local variable, right? And if I am declaring here as final int ab, okay. Now if you know, if you understood the previous concept of local variable, okay, because this variable, this ab is the local variable or global variable, tell me, this ab variable is local variable or global variable? Local, right? If it is local variable, now you have to confirm, is it visible to JVM or not? This local variable is visible to JVM or not? What is the scope of this AB variable? What is the boundary of this AB variable? It, okay, so the boundary of this AB variable is from here to here. Okay, and JVM can see, or JVM can watch each member present inside the class, but JVM cannot JVM cannot see the the variables or the property which is available to the each member. Okay, so public static void main is one member, right? And the one variable I was defining inside the member, so JVM directly cannot see this. Okay, JVM can see this main method. Similarly, you can define n number of method, m1, m2, m3, m4, like that. JVM can be able to access all these methods, but JVM cannot access this AB. Okay, JVM cannot see this. If it cannot, if JVM is not able to visualize this, if JVM is not able to see this variable, how come it is possible it can allocate the default value? Correct? JVM cannot, now JVM is not able to provide the default value to AB. But in the case of global variable, JVM was directly providing the default value if you are not initializing that. Okay, but here, if you are not initializing and JVM is also not able to provide the default value, then what will happen? Correct? Now, see here. So similarly, this is my example. So this is one member, right? Main method is the member. So inside the inside this member, I am defining one variable, that is the local variable, right? Local variable, and this is the global variable. Correct? Global variable. Okay. So if you are not, suppose as of now I am commenting this. Let me now just focus here. Just focus on here. Now tell me, JVM is not able to see this. If JVM is not able to see this, JVM will not provide any default value. Okay. Then who will provide the default value? You are also not providing, JVM is also not providing. In this case, what will happen? Let me just compile it. So Java C test4.java. Okay, it is compiled. Okay, so but whenever you are going to use this variable, whenever you are going to use this variable, okay, so there is one confusion. There might be one confusion in your mind. Okay, using means what? Okay, so I am using means you can perform wherever you will use this AB variable. Not only I am printing here. As of now I am printing here, that means I am using this variable. Okay, but later point in time you can write AB plus BC. That means you are here also you are using AB variable. Okay, just make sure. So don't be in confusion that this is only the way to use any variable. No. Okay, there are n number of things that you can do with the variable. Okay, we will see that later, but as of now just let assume that AB variable I'm using while printing it. Okay, now let me try to compile here. Now what it is saying, variable AB might not have been initialized. Variable AB might not have been initialized. That means the variable is not initialized and you are trying to use it. Correct? So why you are using it if it is not initialized? Okay, so here you have to, you cannot do like this, AB is equal to 10. If you will try to do so, okay, so okay, but now let me see here, compiled, and you can run this. Now it is printing AB value is 10. Why it is? But it is not, see here, it is not allowed here. See here, BC is equal to 10 in the case of global variable. See here, you cannot initialize there in the different line, but here you can initialize. Okay, but only once, but you cannot, you cannot initialize twice. AB is equal to 20. No, you can't do. Okay, well, let me just comment it here. Because of that, let me just comment it. Okay, see here, variable AB might already have been initialized, and why you are trying to initialize it again, right? Java, your JVM is very, very smart, and it is telling to you, it is suggesting you, boss, that variable AB might already have been assigned, and have, why you're trying to assign it again. That, okay, so see here, AB value is already assigned. 10 you have assigned to AB, 20 again you are trying to assign to AB, but that is not possible. You cannot do so because it's a constant. And now my question is, you have to tell me why we are able to modify the constant, okay, in the different line in the case of local variable, but why we cannot be able to do so with the global variable. What is the reason? Can you please tell me why we can't do so? Clear? Got it my question? You get it my question or not? My question is, why we are able to initialize the local variable in different line, why not global variable? Tell me guys, if you understood. So Akanksha is saying because in local variable no default value is assigned to the variable. Correct. But because global yeah, so for global variable, JVM will provide the default value. But in the case of local variable, JVM cannot give the default value. Still the AB is not assigned. Okay, so before using the AB variable, you can initialize that, but only once. Okay, remember this thing. But in the case of global variable, you cannot do so, because if you will write in the case of, in the case of here, in the case of global variable, if you will leave like this, if you will leave like this, and yeah, already I've commented. So see here what it is saying. JVM is trying to say there is one error, okay, inside the test4.java file at line number 3, there is one error. What is that error? Variable bc not initialized in the default constructor. Okay, we'll see that what is constructor. There is one way you can, if you are not initializing this variable here, there is one more option. There is only one more option is there, okay, where you can, initialize it. But that is the case with global variable, not with the local. That place is constructor, but we'll discuss this thing in later point in time. Okay, but ultimately it is giving error because you are not initializing it. Okay, because if you are not initializing, JVM will provide the default value, which is 0 in this case. Okay, but PC, why we are declaring the BC if it is 0, right? We want this BC to, use some other values, right? Or maybe BC is equal to 20, maybe 30 I want to use. Okay, so in this case it won't give any error because you have already initialized it. Okay, now it is happy. Why it is happy? Because, okay, now you are clearly telling that the 30 value would be there for PC and you cannot change it. Okay, and if you will remove this, now your compiler is confused. Okay, this guy is trying to assign one, this guy is trying to, defining one variable which is BC, but he or she is not providing any value. In this case JVM will provide the value, but that is the JVM base. JVM is providing, but then what is the use of BC, right? If JVM will provide the default value, then what is the use of the BC variable for user, right? So that is why it is given error. So remember this thing. Now see here, we will see some more thing. Now we have to define always final int x by is equal to 90. That is perfectly valid. Okay, so conclusion is local variable you can define in same line as well as in different line, but in only once. Remember this point. Okay, now you xy. Okay, now xy plus 100. Can we do this? Okay, let me just comment it out. First see the output, compile it, compile successfully, Java test 4. Okay, in this case xy it is printing 90 and directly we are printing 90. See here. Okay, so for this 90, what do you think? You are writing simply, suppose simply I am just saying you print 10, right? What do you think? For this 10, memory will be allocated or not? Tell me guys now. This thing also very important. Memory would be allocated or not? Tell me. What about others? Suppose I am talking about the last statement, system.out.println 10. So if I'm simply printing 10, what does it mean? Whether the memory would be allocated by the JVM for this for this or not? No, because it's just printing. Akancha is saying no because it's just printing. Yeah. So Akancha, so so whatever, see, it is not variable, right? So whatever value we are printing, that value is nothing but the variable. If it, okay, so for variable we are going to allocate some memory, right? But for simple value, it's a just static value. Okay, it's just hard coded. Okay, if you are hard coding it, that means simply it is printing. It is not, JVM will not bother about it. As it is, it will copy and paste. Okay, so it will not store it anywhere in temporary location in memory, in your RAM or in your anywhere in your heap memory. Okay, it will not store any memory. Similarly, for this 90 also, clear, there won't be any memory assigned. Clear? Any confusion in this? Why memory will not be given for these two variables? Because these are the values. Okay, these are not the variable, these are the values. Okay, and okay, so you, this is one more important point you need to remember here is, always remember this, for constant also memory will not be allocated, and this is the advantage of constant. For any constant, memory won't be provided by the JVM. Simply the value will be replaced by at compile time only, because it's a static, as you told, as you told me that, Akanksha, you told me earlier, you may remember that constant are the static values, right? So statically, or you can say at the compile time only, the value would be replaced by the actual value. The value of the xy, this is a constant, right? Xy is the constant. So at the run, at the compile time itself, the value would be replaced. That means there is no runtime. If there is no runtime, there is no memory, right? Clear or not? So how your how the compiler will compile this line? It will compile this line and it will compile. After that compilation, it will replace the previous line with this line, like this. Clear? Akansha, Ullas, Abhinay, everyone. Any doubt? So constant are statics. Okay, constant are is the static variable. Okay, and at compile time only, not at runtime. At compile time only, the actual, I mean the constant would be replaced by the actual value through compiler. Okay, at the compile time only. That means statically it would be replaced by the actual value. So your xy would be replaced with actual value. So this line at after compilation would be replaced with this line, and then JVM will read this line only. Clear? Okay, don't think that, don't confuse that. Okay, JVM will read obviously two lines. Okay, just 1 minute. JVM will read only two lines only, but instead of this first line, instead of this line, compiler will replace this line with this. Clear? So like this, it will read all those lines. Clear? So for that means at compile time only, okay, at compile time only, we have replaced this line with actual value, right? So if this is the line, do you think the JVM will allocate the memory for this? Akanksha, or maybe anybody? Are you getting? Yes, absolutely right. So no memory would be allocated by the JVM for constant, because at the time of compilation itself, this line of the constant would be replaced by the actual values. Clear? No memory would be provided to the JVM, and that is the main advantage. Why we are using constant? Just to save the memory, correct? Why we are using constant, guys? Just to save the memory, just to enhance the performance of my application. Okay, as many as variable you use, that much memory is required by the your application, correct? So I don't want to waste the memory. I don't want to waste the memory, right? So that my mobile or my system should not be hanged. I don't want to do so. That's why we are going to use constant. So you have to remember this. Clear? Something like this. So but here this is the actual program, but this code would be replaced by the actual value. Remember this. Okay, so this is all about, I think, constant, and I hope you guys got it, whatever I was trying to deliver. Okay, so constant are also known as final variable, and the meaning of constant is you cannot change the value of variable once it has initialized. Clear? So something like this, if you initialize with some value, you cannot change the value of that particular constant. And I already told you, whenever you're trying to define any constant, okay, remember this, always define it with capital letters. Always define in capital letter. If there are multiple words, use underscore with it. Clear? Now we will see the program. Okay, so if it is clear, then we can move further. Now system out println, if we will write xy plus 100, okay, what would be the output? What would be the output? So the same line would be replaced like this. Clear? So now we will see, compile it. It is compiled. Okay, any doubt, guys? Clear? Now we will see. We can define like this, right? Okay, can we define like this or not? Now tell me whether this program will compile or not, and what it will print. System dot out dot println, what it would print. Please respond. What it will print? But it will compile or not? Yeah, it will compile, but it will, if you will use this variable at this point in time, it will fail. Compilation would be fail. If you will comment, let me just comment it out and check. So compilation, there is no problem. Okay, but when you will uncommented it and now you try to run, okay, let me compile it again. See here what it is saying, cd might not have been initialized. If it is not initialized, why you are using this variable, correct? So you have to initialize it before it will, you know, you are using it. So now let me just, initializing it with this 4549658 437, suppose. Okay, so now we will compile. See here, what is the problem? Integer number too large. That means whatever value we are going to provide here, that is out of range of the integer type. Okay, that's why we are not able to do so. Okay, remember this. But you can't do like this because the value is out of range. Okay, so if you will add also, okay, if you will add also, it won't work because this is not the valid value. If you will remove this, let me try it again. This compiled. Okay, see here, something like this. Okay, but if you will do like this, it won't work. You have to be careful. I have commented it out. Now int where is equal to 90. Any confusion in this? Okay, it's the simple variable, remember, it's a simple variable, it is not the constant. Now but if here, if I will do variable plus 100, okay, then again it will give the proper result only. Okay, but the memory would be allocated for this variable because it is the variable first of all, and it is not the constant. If it is not constant, this the same as it is variable would be taken, and at runtime the memory will be allocated for this variable inside the stack, remember. Okay, so whatever the variable and whatever the whatever variable you are defining here inside any member of the class, that variables related memory would be allocated inside the stack memory. Okay, remember this. So whenever you are using any member or method, you are defining n number of variables here, and okay, the corresponding memory would be allocated to the stack memory, not in heap. Okay, so always heap memory, okay, heap memory stand for creating the objects. Okay, always the object would be created inside the heap memory, but whatever variable you are defining, these are the primitive variables, right? This is the primitive variable, right? It is not reference variable. If it is reference variable, that means some object has to be created, and that object with that reference variable would be pointing to that particular object, and where is that object would be created inside the heap memory. right? But the reference related memory would be created inside the stack only. You'll see the memory structure, don't worry, in detail. But here, see here, for this memory would be allocated, but for constant there is no memory. For this, how we can define this? This sentence would be replaced by actual value, something like this. Clear? So JVM will replace this line by, you know, you can for your observation or for your reference, I'm just commenting out here and leave it. Now let me just see if something more. Okay, so don't think that you can use const. This is also, const is also one, you know, keywords present in Java. Okay, and you feel, if you will think that okay, I can define the constant by using const. No, you can't use, because the const we are not at all using. See here, if you will compile it, what it is saying, illegal start of expression. That means some modifier is required, but something else it is found, right? So don't use const to define while defining the constant. What you have to use, guys, to define the constant? What we have to use? What we have to use? Can we write like this? X by, where is X by? Yeah. So X by is small X by. Can we write like this, guys? X by is this is the one constant, and here I'm writing X by is equal to 56. CD is again one constant, and CD is equal to 45. Is it possible? No, it is not possible. So we cannot modify it. Clear? So this is all about the constant. Any confusion, any doubt, you can write, you can tell me. And here, let me just read out and write notes. So that is your notes. So if you are defining the constant, then it must be initialized within the same line. Otherwise, compiler will give the error. Correct? Now, if you are defining and initializing constant, and if you are using the constant, okay, then compiler will use the actual value. Okay, if you are defining and initializing the constant, and if you are using it, then compiler will use the actual value. Clear? Is there any confusion by reading this line? Here JVM will not be providing the memory. I mean, JVM will not be using the memory management, obviously, for the constant, and direct value will come through bytecode to the JVM. Okay, this line is very important. Okay, because for constant, JVM will not allocate any memory. If JVM will not allocate any memory, then from where it will get the value? From actual value, right? Where is the actual value? In the bytecode, because compiler will compile, and actual value would be I mean that your constant would be replaced by the actual value, right? And it will be present inside the bytecode. Correct? So JVM will directly read that value and print it, copy paste, so that we cannot modify that value again. Clear? So once it is compiled, now your, because it's a static variable, I mean static values, it's a fixed value. Okay, so once the bytecode is generated, you cannot modify after that. Okay, what you can guys, just try to understand what you can modify. You can modify if some memory, if you allocate it, right? If some memory would be there, some value is there. Now by you accessing that memory location, we can try to, you know, change some value in that memory. But here there is no memory at all for the constant, right? The actual value only, actual value itself is come through the bytecode and available to the JVM. Now we cannot change it. Clear, guys? So that is the main, you know, advantage also. While defining the constant, JVM will not provide the memory. JVM will not use the actual memory. Okay. Now what will happen when you write the following Java code inside the main method? Final long number is equal to 10. And if you are trying to print this number, and if you will trying to do this, and if you will try to do this, okay, try at your home, will it work or not? You have to tell me. Okay, so see here what will happen here. We will see when you will compile it, this code I'm talking about, this code and this code, this code and this code, line number 1 2 3. Remember, when you will try to compile this, the compiler will replace the actual value, that is 10, in SOP, in the system.out.println. So this line will be replaced like this. See here, like this, actual value is 10. Okay, this line would be replaced by this. Any doubt? Now, and this SOP would be converted into, okay, bytecode. Converted into bytecode. Now, so JVM will take the corresponding bytecode and will get the actual value from the bytecode. So it will execute the statement as it is. Clear? Now, what will happen here in this line? JVM will take the corresponding bytecode and will get the actual value 10 plus 1. Okay, so the number, this variable will be replaced by the actual value which it will get from bytecode plus 1, and it will execute the expression, then output will be printed. Clear? So your actual line would be replaced by this. Okay, before compiling it was looking like this, but after compilation your compiler will convert this line to this line and corresponding bytecode would be generated. Clear? Now system.out.println number plus plus. Okay, so this line will give the problem. This line will give. Why? Because JVM will take the corresponding bytecode and will get the actual value of number. But so see, if you know if you know post increment, okay, this is the post increment, right? So ultimately what here, it is nothing but what is the meaning of this line is number is equal to number plus 1. Correct? The post increment is like this. But see here, what exactly we are doing here, we'll discuss this thing in detail later about the post increment. But see here, number is equal to number, so number is the variable, number is again, and here, so what is the value of number? Already we know it will be replaced by 10, no problem, it will be replaced by 10 plus 1 like this. Okay, what is this? 11 or not, right? 11. Now this 11 value again you are assigning to the same variable which is already you declared as final. Correct? You already declared this variable as final or not? You declared this number plus plus, okay, you declared this number variable as final, right? See here, final, number is final. Can we do like this? Okay, let me just see here. I am having the compiler, what to worry, I am having the compiler, I am having the development kit. What is the problem? Let me see here. Number int number, let me see here, int number is equal to 10. Now system dot out dot println, okay, if I will write number, okay, what will happen? And if I will write system dot out dot println, and if I will write number plus 1, what will happen? And here if I will write okay, what will happen? Suppose I will comment this line. Okay, so then I will try to compile. 1 minute, let me compile, let me comment it here, because we cannot, once the variable is already initialized, you cannot modify the variable if it is constant. Okay, these two xy and cd are the constant, and again we are trying to initialize this variable which is already initialized. Cd value is initialized here, xy value is initialized here, and here we are trying to initialize it again. That's why it is not possible, because it's a constant. Now number is 10, int number is equal to 10, and let me define it here final also, because it's very important. It's a constant now. Okay, now number, so here this line would be replaced by this line or not? Tell me. At compile time only, since it is the, okay, this line, okay, so this line would be replaced by this line as actual. Okay, now this line also at compile time only, but as soon as you will compile, this line immediately will become compiled and will be replaced by this line, correct? Now let me check here. Okay, compilation fine, cool. Okay, 10 and 11, 10 is the number and 11 is here. Now what happen if I will try to do number is equal to, can I do number is equal to 12, sorry 11 or not? Guys, can you please quickly confirm? Can I do number is equal to 11 here directly or not? No. If I can't do this, okay, if I can't do this, then we can do this also, right? Or not? Correct? Not able to compile. See, here cannot assign a value to final variable. Already it is a final variable. How come it is possible? So this is nothing but your number plus plus. This is nothing but your number plus plus. Let me uncomment it. Comment this line. Now let me try to compile here. Again, it won't compile. See here, cannot assign a value to final variable which is number. Okay, it is a constant. You can't assign it again and again. Okay. So that's all I think from constant side. Okay. So already you know. Okay. So it will not compile. Clear? So that program, again I will give that program. Up to here, any doubt guys? Any confusion, any problem, any doubt you can ask. This is all about the constant part. That is how we will define the constant. Okay, and why we can modify the constant value. Okay, why we have to initialize the constant in same line. Okay, when we will discuss about the constructor. Okay, there is one more point that I need to write it here. Note, in case of global variable, okay, you can you will have one more option to initialize this variable. In the case of global variable, you will have one more option to initialize it. Okay, where inside the constructor, inside the constructor, we will see that. Okay, so in the case of global variable, if you don't want to initialize in same line, in case of global variable, if you don't want to initialize in same line, then you will have one more option to initialize it, that is nothing but your constructor. We will see that. Okay, okay, so okay, so that's all for constant, from constant side. Okay, so let me stop the recording.